Hi y'all. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. My name is Amira, and today we are doing a demo of the Natasha Denona Pastel palette, which is what I have on my eyes right now. Now, I filmed this originally just doing a straight demo for you guys talking to the camera, but there has been a lot of activity around my neighborhood today. There's a rainstorm, there's a bunch of cars, someone in my house had a sneezing fit. It was just a lot going on. So I decided what I'm going to do is just do show that audio to you, show that video of the footage of me actually applying the eyeshadow and creating the look while talking you through my opinions on the palette itself. I'm going to do some swatches of the shades for you on my arm, on my hand and arm here right now. And we're going to start with the first row. So this is Tulle Illusion, Mint Frost, Bora, and Dainty. I don't have my glasses on, so reading these is like, but yes. So this is the first row of shades. Very pretty. And I actually used Dainty and Tulle on my eyes today. So these are two of the shades that I used. And here we have the second row. Let me see if I can get this build this up so you can see this a little bit better. I mean, we are dealing with pastels here, so it's going to be a little light. So we have the first row here, which is Brisk, Adriatic, Starlit, Bellini, and Bubble. And Bubble is on my eyes in the very outer corners just to deepen a little bit. I mean, as much depth as you can get with a pastel shade, but it's just like right here in my outer corners and on my lower lash line. Next up, we have the final row, which is Limoncello, Duet, which is the shimmer that you see here. And it is a slight duochrome, so it has a shift from blue to pink. Airy, which is the blue that you see, most of the blue that you see here going all the way up to my brow bone is Airy. Zest, and then Feather. And Feather, again, is the light pink that you see in this area here. So this palette has quite a few shades that are in Natasha's cream to powder formula, which I love. It's one of my all-time favorite formulas. It is what I would say is probably the best way to do a pastel because it has a little bit more body, and pastel shades tend to be quite powdery, quite loosey-goosey on the eye. It's very hard to get like a strong pigment from it. It's why I always say if you're gonna do pastel, first of all, use a white base. Wrong thing. Use a white base, which is what I use today, and don't set it, just so that the shadow has something to stick to because of the fact that pastels can be so powdery. But when you're using her cream to powder formula, it has some body and some weight to it, so it can catch onto the eye and onto that eyeshadow base a little bit better. But it also, that formula specifically, and there are other cream to powder formulas on the market that I've tried that I'm not as big a fan of. The thing that I love the most about Natasha's cream to powder formula specifically is the blendability of that formula. They blend very well. They apply very pigmented. They have that creamy texture, but then the moment you start blending, they blend like a powder. They blend like a dream. So she has here, let's see, she has about, I would say, more than half of the matte shades. I would say 6 of the matte shades, and there are 8 that are her cream to powder formula. That makes me so happy. The shades that are not her cream to powder formula are Airy, Feather. Actually, I would say maybe 4 because Bellini isn't either. So she has 4. So it's Airy, Feather, Bellini, and Brisk. These are just some of the traditional powdery formulas. They pick up, there's a lot of kick up in the pan because, again, pastels are incredibly powdery. That is not the case with the cream to powder formula. There's not a lot of kick up in the pan. So that's a great plus. The metallics in here feel very nice. Like I said, I used Dainty and Duet, and then I added a little bit of Illusion in my inner corner. These are very nice. They're her standard great metallic formula. Like, I enjoy Natasha's metallic formula. Again, Duet is the duochrome in the palette, the one duochrome in the palette. The shift is very subtle, but it's there. Like, I have it here and you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see, but it looks quite blue here. But it's actually, like, in real life, it looks more pink, and then when I shift, you can kind of see a bit of the blue. So there is definitely a shift there. It's just not that really strong, heavy duochrome shift that you would get in like an indie eyeshadow, you know, an indie duochrome. I would say that this is probably a more user-friendly, or someone who's just dipping their toe into duochromes. It's duochrome for that target market and audience, which honestly, this entire palette I feel is for that target market and audience. This palette is for people who I think are dipping their toe into color, dipping their toe into pastels. The usability of it is what makes me think that, because of the fact that she opted to use so many, opted to put so many of her colors into that cream to powder formula. Tells me that the whole point of this is to make it colorful, make it pastel, but make it really user-friendly. I didn't have any issues with applying these shadows on my eye. And I have to say, when she first came out with this palette, I was not sure that that would be the case. I was very afraid that this was going to be a chalky mess. It is not. It is not a chalky mess. I mean, this is the thing about pastels. Pastels are chalky by nature because they have a white base. So you're never going to have a pastel that's going to read on the eye as something that is, you know, like a brown would, or even a blue, even a rich blue matte. They're not going to read the same because of the fact that pastels have so much white pigment in them. But I'm starting to see now that there are being better formulations where you don't just feel like you're getting white eyeshadow with a hint of color. You're not getting that with this at all. I'm excited to use this more and to try some more looks with it. I might do a video if you guys want to see that. If you want to see me do a couple of look demos for you, I can certainly do that. I have this look here. You guys will see that in the footage of me applying this look. And I really enjoy it. I think it's a beautiful look, and so far I'm enjoying the palette. Yeah, so that is my sort of first impression of the palette. Now let's sort of get into comparisons a little bit, because I do have this palette here from Give Me Glow. And I bought this when they came out with it last spring, and this is the Give Me Glow Pastel Dreams palette. Now, this is what it looks like inside. I will say, I was a bit on the fence about this palette. Not because I think the palette is bad. At the time, I wasn't sure I was much of a pastel fan. And I've had to come to the conclusion that every time I do a pastel look, I always love it. It's always, you know, today when I was doing this look, I'm like, maybe I am a pastel person because I'm enjoying this so much. So now that I've sort of come to terms with my love of pastels, I'm viewing this a little bit differently. At the time, I was like, I like it. I don't think I'll get a lot of use out of it. I still don't think I'm going to get a lot of use out of this one, or the Natasha Denona one, in the same way that I would say my bronze palette from Natasha Denona, or even, you know, like my vintage rose palette from Give Me Glow. One is very sort of neutral toned, and one is has color in it, but those are colors that I tend to gravitate towards more than, say, a pastel. But I still enjoy having these palettes in my collection. So as you can see, I'm just going to do some comparisons of the mattes in this, comparable mattes, because I would say that there's a couple of shades in here that Natasha does not have in her palette, and there's a couple of shades that Give Me Glow doesn't have. The thing that I find really cool about what Give Me Glow did is that their colors all have corresponding metallics. So you've got a blue matte, a blue metallic, purple matte, purple metallic, and on down the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swatch the corresponding shades next to each other so you guys can see. So first off, we're going to start with the peach, and I'm going to start off with Twinkle Twinkle from the Give Me Glow, and then Bellini from the Natasha Denona. And I will say right off the bat, like I said, they're both incredibly powdery, because that's a pastel for you. So I don't know if you guys can see that. The lighting is not going to help me out. Let me turn off one of these lights or turn this light down and see if it helps a little bit with the color. There we go. So this is the Give Me Glow shade, and this is the Natasha Denona shade. You can see that the shades aren't actually all that similar once you swatch them. In the pan, they actually do look pretty similar. I will say that right off the bat, the Give Me Glow one was way more pigmented in swatches. You can even see it on my fingers, I think. This is the Give Me Glow, and this is the Natasha Denona. So they're not that similar once you actually swatch them out. Both very powdery. This one is way more pigmented. Next up, I have the pink mattes from both palettes. So there are two pink mattes in the Natasha Denona. There's Feather and there's Tulle, and then there's Pink Rain from Give Me Glow. So at the top here, I have Pink Rain from Give Me Glow. And as you can see, it's much lighter than the two shades from the Natasha Denona palette. It has a much stronger white base to it. This one is Tulle. And as you can see, it's got almost like a lavender vibe. So I would say the Natasha Denona doesn't have a lavender in it like the Give Me Glow does, but it does have this shade. This is what I have on my eyes right now. And as you can see, it looks quite pinky on my eye, but here you can see that it has quite a bit of a lavender undertone. This is Tulle. So I use these two shades together today and on my eye. I used Tulle sort of like right in here just to deepen that up, but the other shade, which is Feather, is the one that's underneath my metallics. So yeah, as you can see, this can function as a very light lavender. And let me go ahead and swatch the lavender just underneath so you guys can see what I mean. So this is the lavender from Give Me Glow. Much richer, much deeper than the one here. And I think this one is, that's because this one is sort of straddling the fence of being pink or sort of purpley toned. But as you can see, it's still much more pigmented than the Natasha Denona ones. And this one again is the cream to powder, and this is a traditional powder. And these are the two Give Me Glows. So like I said, the Give Me Glow, for me, I think if you are a person of color in the sense of like you have a deeper skin tone, like deeper than me, you might fare better with the Give Me Glow because of how rich the tone, the shadows are. They're incredibly pigmented. They're very pastel, but again, grab your white base and I think you probably have a better experience as far as getting shades to show up right away as opposed to having to build and build and build. Let's try the, let me see, do we have anything else that's comparable? Yes, let's try Magic Mint from Give Me Glow, and then let's try Brisk from Natasha Denona. All right, again, you can see here, this one is deeper, richer, more pigmented. This is Brisk. It's a much more powdery, lighter, but as you can see, it still shows up. Like this is me rubbing it with just the finger that I was using to swatch it. It still shows up. Let's do the same with this one and see. And I'm going to show you the issue that I did have with the Give Me Glow, and I think you can kind of see it here once I do this. Do you see what I'm talking about? This is so pigmented that it's almost kind of hard to blend. So that's the drawback I feel with the Give Me Glow, is that it's pigmented, but because it's so pigmented, it's very hard to blend, which is interesting for a pastel. That is my main issue with it. I still think it's a good option if you are of a deeper skin tone. You would just have to probably kind of work on it as far as the blend goes. But what I enjoy about the trade-off for that with the Natasha Denona is that even though it's less pigmented, it's a bit more, again, user-friendly. And I think that is the general theme with this palette, is that everything is just a bit more user-friendly. Let's go ahead and swatch the blues. We're going to do Queen of the Clouds from the Give Me Glow. And then we're going to do the two blues from Natasha Denona, which are Airy and Bubble. And again, these are the two blues that I used on my eyes today. Okay, so this is the blue, Queen of the Clouds. As you can see, again, the white base is very strong in this. It is like a sky blue. And then this one here is Airy, which is the powder, the traditional powder formula from Natasha. And then here we have her cream to matte formula in Bubble. And these are the two that I have on my eye today. So again, same theme. The theme is, you know, one palette has a lot of pigment to it, but as a result, I think it's a bit less user-friendly. Give Me Glow, I will say this. Natasha Denona's palettes are very pigmented in general. They apply darker. And that's another thing I want to say is my experience with Natasha Denona's and most of her palettes with the shades in the palette, they all apply a little bit deeper than they swatch and a little bit deeper than they look in the pan. So that's one thing to keep in mind. With Give Me Glow, one thing I will say is that their mattes are incredibly pigmented, and they are, I would not say that Give Me Glow mattes are beginner friendly per se. I think you have to have a little bit of experience knowing how to blend super pigmented shadows, because if you don't, you might find yourself in a position where you're really struggling to you're either going to be really overwhelmed with a lot of pigment, or you're just going to be struggling to blend it out in general. So those are the trade-offs there. I want to show you two other palettes before I go, and I wanted to show you the Lunar Lavender palette from Kaleidos. This is a really great curated palette, and what this has in it that neither one of those palettes has is it has some neutrals. It gives you some neutrals to help anchor your look. You've got a light tan here and then a dark brown here, and then you've got this shimmery lavender and this shimmery blue, which is really not a blue, it's more like a shifty. And this is a perfect example of what I mean about a shadow that has a really strong shift. Let's do a little quick comparison of that one with Dainty while I'm here. So this is the shade from the Kaleidos palette, and this is Dainty. They're both doing the same thing. This one shifts from pinky lavendery, and this one shifts from pinky lavendery to kind of a blue, and this one kind of shifts from like a pinky blue. But as you can see, the shift is very subtle, whereas this one is just like, here, let's do this. Let me see. Still got my hand is still stained blue, but as you can see, the shift is just different. Again, this one has more of a pinky blue. This one's more of a lavendery pinky, I guess you would call it. But just to give you an idea of what I mean about the shift in the Natasha Denona ones not being that strong as compared to some indie brands. And then you have this shade here, which I will compare to Dainty. Or did I call this one Dainty? I'm sorry guys, that was Dust, not Dainty. This one is Dainty Below. So this is the one from Kaleidos, and this is the one from Natasha Denona. They're actually not that different. They both have a lot of sparkle, a lot of sparkly, glittery vibes. They're not glitters, but they have that vibe. So this was the Kaleidos Lunar Lavender, which I purchased this one around spring of last year as well. And then we have the Pat McGrath Fleur Fantasia, which is a palette that I actually quite love. I love it more than I was expecting to love it. And I'm going to swatch this one next to Dainty as well. Actually, let's swatch it next to both of these. I'm going to wipe my hand off. Should I wipe my hand off? No, because I want you guys to see what I'm talking about. So let's do Dust again next to this one here. Okay. So this is the shade from Fleur Fantasia, and this is Dust from the Natasha Denona Pastel. They're actually quite similar, but the shift in this one is just a tad stronger, I would say. And you guys let me know if you agree or not, but I think the shift in this one is a bit stronger, and the shade that I swatched is this one here, which is called Lavender Blue. Which kind of makes sense because, yeah, it is kind of lavender blue. But even here, you can kind of see that the shift is just a little bit stronger. And I would say that the pink here is a little bit different as well. It's a bit richer in tone. It's more of a traditional type of like pink metallic. It's got a little bit of body to it, a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, a little bit more texture than any of the metallics in the Natasha Denona one. And then I'm just going to swatch these two. I kind of know that they're probably not going to be similar, and I was right. So this is the peachy tone from the Pat McGrath, and this is the peachy tone Bellini from the Natasha Denona. I prefer this one because it still reads as a pastel on me, but it just has a little bit more depth. It's got a little bit more of a richer tone. But again, I love this palette. I think it's a beautiful little quad, and I think you can still get these. I'll have to check. If you can, I'll definitely leave a link to it in the description box, but I believe you can still get that. And then this is not a pastel palette, but I just wanted to show you guys what I mean by sort of the muted shade. So this is the Trio Chrome palette from Natasha Denona, and there are some shades in here that made me think of shades in the pastel palette, and I'm gonna swatch those. So this is Diatonic from Trio Chrome, swatch next to Bellini. And as you can see, it's the same vibe as the one that's in the Pat McGrath. It's a little bit richer. It's got a little bit more going on, but it still kind of has a pastel vibe to it. Whereas this one is lighter, has a stronger white base. I prefer this to this because on my skin tone, this will read much more flattering than, say, something like that. And then with her duochromes, you've got Color Flip here from Trio Chrome. And then you have Dainty, which is... And as you can see, it's just much stronger. It's a much stronger. And this one's a multi-chrome. I wouldn't say this is a multi-chrome. This is a duochrome. It's purple, and then on my skin, like I'm looking at it right now, and it's looking quite green. I don't even know if you guys can see the green. When I shift it there, you might be able to see it a bit. But yeah, on my skin, looking at it in real life, it looks green. And then when I hold it up to the camera, it looks purpley toned. And then this is Dainty. Or Dust. I keep calling this Dainty. This is Dust. Look at that. It's a very, like, and these are both Natasha Denona. So that just lets you know of how subtle the shift is in Dust compared to some of her more traditional, her versions of duochromes or multi-chromes. I'm also going to swatch for you guys Naga, which is a shade from Trio Chrome next to Feather. So I'm looking at them now and I'm like, huh, that's really similar. All right, so this is Naga from the Trio Chrome palette, and this is Feather from Pastel. They're very similar, very similar. All right, guys, so that was my quick little, not so quick comparison for you guys of some palettes that immediately came to my mind that I own that have some pastel vibes, some pastel shades in them. As you can see, there's a lot of very similar shades within the Natasha Denona Pastel and the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome. I will say if the Trio Chrome is $129 and the Pastel palette is $65. So if you don't have either of those and you're trying to decide, you're like, I prefer the shades in one and not the other. This one's larger, you get more product, but you also pay double the price. So if you're interested in the shades in here, or the shades that I swatched in here were interesting to you, this might be a good sort of, compromise for you. And then of course you have the Pastel Dreams palette from Give Me Glow. If you are of a deeper skin tone and you want more bang, more punch, more oomph in your pastels, I would actually recommend this one over the Natasha Denona, only because of that factor. I think, again, I think if you are new to pastels in general, the Natasha Denona is a better option. But if you are not and you have a deeper skin tone, or even if you don't and you just want more punch, this is a great option. This one is, I believe, $54. You get a lot of products. You don't get as many options, though. I will say that this palette is quite limited. Even though you get a lot of shadows and you get a lot of product, as you can see, what you're working with is just matte versions and then metallic versions of the same shades. So that's probably one of my critiques of this palette, is I don't think it needed to be this big, and I think it functions more as a good companion palette for other palettes. So if you have like, you know, you're looking for a pastel palette to put with some neutrals, this might be a good option. This is another really great option, and it's far more curated than either of those palettes or any of those palettes. It's pastel. You've got these beautiful lavenders, but you've got your neutrals. If you're someone who really wants neutrals, you need neutrals to anchor a look. I don't necessarily use a lot of neutrals with my pastels. I sort of lean into that really sort of ephemeral, soft, cloudy, cotton candy vibe with pastels. That's what I enjoy about using them. But if you're someone who you're not used to doing that and you just want a little more structure, you need something that's sort of like the anchor for your looks, this is a really good option. You've got a light matte brown and a dark matte brown. And then you also have these beautiful metallics, and these metallics are gorgeous. And then even more curated is Fleur Fantasia. 4 shades, that's it. This is a great companion palette. I use this on its own. I don't have an issue with that. I don't necessarily need to use pastels as accents. I just sort of lean into the vibe. But again, if you do, this is a great companion to other things. If you love the Pat McGrath formula, if you like you're okay with the Pat McGrath price point, this is a really, really good option. And this is from her Holiday 2021 collection, and I believe this might still be available. Like I said, I will drop it down in the description box below if it is. Okay, so that is everything, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like. And if you are not subscribed, please be sure to subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you own the pastel palette from Natasha Denona? Do you have it yet? And if you do you like it? And if you don't, are you going to pick it up? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye now.